All right, so in this video, I'm going to be going over Jordan's best throw and worst throw from the 2024 season to compare and contrast what you can see different in his technique from this 84-meter throw compared to a 66-meter throw, which I'm going to show you in the next video. So we'll just watch it full speed one time through. All right. So the big thing that stands out to me here is when he's starting in the back, he's getting really good energy, okay? And you can see how tall he is and how he's going through the running steps, and his feet are coming off the ground because he's really, really bouncy and light on his feet, and he's really driving forward and getting a lot of forward energy. So you can see, look at how his knee is almost level with his hip, and his feet are about 4 or 5 inches off the ground. You can see how tall and bouncy he is. And then through the crossovers, he's also very light and bouncy on his feet as well. So look at how here he's getting this good stride where both his feet are off the ground. He's really bouncy and really getting a good crossover here and just really staying very upright. And then you could tell that his hand and the javelin are very level, okay? So you look in the back here, his hand and his shoulder are level, and then his left shoulder is level. So he's fully tall, okay? At this point, he's really, really tall, even though he's going through the crossovers. He's not leaning back at all, okay? A lot of times younger throwers will hit the crossovers and then start to lean back, and then the javelin gets really low to the ground. You'll see here he hits his penultimate, and he has a little bit of a lean back, but you can see that the javelin is still relatively tall, where it's not super, super low to the ground, and it's staying level. So you got the left shoulder and the right shoulder and the hands in pretty much a straight line where it's level and it's not super, super leaned back, okay? It is leaned back a little bit because it's necessary to get some height on the javelin, but you're not forcing that tilt. And then you see there he finishes through and follows through after the throw, okay? So that's the biggest thing that I see, is that he's really tall through the crossovers, and you see here how this is when he's about to hit his block. You see this position that he's in where his back foot is turning forward and his left arm is reaching out in front of him and his left leg is reaching out in front of him. This is then causing him to have a really, really good stretch, and then even though he has that lean, he's still getting his body out in front of him in that linear fashion. It's causing him to go forward and stay relatively level with this hand and arm and shoulder, and the javelin tip is there on his eyebrow. Okay, all right, so you see the throw here. This is where it lands at about 66 meters or so. So just for comparison, his PR would have been past this line, which is 80. It would have been about here. Okay, so pretty big difference. All right. So what you notice here is, watch how Jordan, when he's starting in this throw, he starts leaning forward. You see how his energy is just darting forward, as opposed to his PR, he was staying more upright. Okay. Then he kind of straightens out. So you'll see here during his crossovers, he's not as bouncy and he's a lot more steppy through the crossovers. And then that leads his penultimate to be much smaller. So then during his back foot contact, he ends up being very leaned back, where you could see that the javelin ends up hitting the ground here. And then in relation to his body, that left arm and the javelin is way too high. And then the right side, the hand is too low, okay? So that causes him to then, he hits the ground a little bit there and then doesn't really get the best flight on the javelin, okay? So just watch it one more time. A lot less bouncy through the crossovers. So he's kind of running through the crossovers and stepping through them rather than bounding and bouncing through them. So what that means is that he's getting a lot less speed, and he's kind of teeter-tottering with his body a little bit, right? So you saw him start out the front where he's going forward and then leans back during the running steps and then draws back, steps through the crossovers instead of bouncing through the crossovers. Then that causes him to try to, all right, I'm coming in with not a lot of speed. Now I'm trying to lean back and then go forward again during the throw. So that's where for him, he wants to make sure that during the crossovers or during the whole approach, you're starting tall, you draw back, you're tall, you're through the crossovers tall, you're through the penultimate tall, then you hit the block tall, and you finish your energy through and forward. Okay? So you can just tell that that's just a big difference, and it's not even his throw that's the problem. It's how he's setting it up in the crossovers. Okay? So you see how when he started on that one, look at how he starts out the back. Watch how he's tall the whole time, goes through his crossovers bouncing, and then stays level and then throws. During his 66-meter throw, leans forward, runs through the crossovers instead of bouncing, leans back, and then tries to then go forward again. So you see that that's kind of like an energy displacement issue, and by staying tall and gaining the speed through the running steps, you're then setting yourself up to carry that speed through the crossovers rather than trying to go forward and then lean back and then throw. So what we did this year to prevent that from happening is last year he would do 5 left steps with the running steps, and then he would go into his drawback and crossovers. So now this year we eliminated that first step, but we replaced it with a skip. So you see here, that's how he's going to start now. Okay, you see it's the slow-mo right here. You see he's walking into it, and then he skips, so that way he's able to get up to speed, but stay tall during that first initial phase. That's something that we've been working on a lot, and it's been really translating really well during his practice throws and during his, see, this is me explaining it here. I can link this video in the show notes below, but I'm just talking a little bit about how we're trying to set him up to stay tall through the whole approach and through the crossovers and through the block so that he's not leaning back as much. So you could see that then we go to then starting to be able to implement it a little bit. This is his first time doing it when we made the change here. And you can just see that it's going to cause him to stay really, really nice and tall and nice and bouncy through the crossovers. Then this is an example too of how we use wickets to stay tall, because it's really, really hard to lean back and reach for these wickets when you are leaning back and reaching. It's very hard to make it through these wickets, so you have to stay tall and carry your speed and be powerful and bouncy through the crossovers in order to make it through these wickets. Then here it is in slow-mo. See the drawback, and look at how tall he's staying through the entire crossovers. Okay, so that's the biggest thing with this, is that obviously Jordan was capable of staying tall and bouncy through the crossovers, but doing this new skip at the beginning is then going to ensure that he's able to be more consistent with his posture and with his running and with his crossovers and penultimate and posture through the entire throw. So here's an example of a practice throw. Last week that was 77 meters. We don't normally measure in practice, but this was one of his last hard throwing days before we're going to have him open up. So we want to see that he is being consistent with what we're working on. So here he's starting a little squatty here, but you see the idea of him doing that skip, and then he gets tall and bouncy and stacked through the whole crossovers or through the whole running steps and crossovers. So that's going to allow him to accelerate faster, and then you see him just stay really tall and long, and then he hits that throw there. What's really good about this too is that Jordan never really threw more than 73 or 74 in practice up until this year. And so now this year he's been able to hit above 75 pretty consistently in practice. So when you see your practice throws start to go up, it's a pretty good sign, because then when you get to the competition and you line it up and your training is lined up to be able to scale back the weight room and all that stuff, you're going to be able to put out a lot better of throws. Okay, so you see the skip, tall, draws back, tall, hits a penultimate, tall, and then gets through the throw. Okay, there's still a lot of work to be done at this point, and you could just see that those are some of the changes that we've been making. And you know, that video of us doing it in practice, that was in the fall, and we didn't really throw out of it until about 6 or 7 months later. So that kind of just goes to show, as well as how when we make these changes, we are really refining them and taking a while to dial them in before we throw out of them and implement them. So I see a lot of times kids will make technical changes to their approach or their throw in the middle of the season, and their season is only 6 to 8 weeks. And for the most part, that is not enough time to really dial it in and get that right before you are actually going to throw out of it full speed. So when we make these technical changes, we're making all of them August, September, October, and then we're working on them and building up to be able to do them at full speed by March and April, and then get ready for the season end of April and then into the summer. So hopefully this video just gives you a little bit of insight as to like how me as a coach, how when I talk to my athletes, how we reflect on the season before and see what kind of technical changes we make, and then when we implement them. And I think that's a testament to Jordan and how often and frequent and how hard he trains, because you know he's putting in the work year round, and a lot of kids don't with javelin and kind of walk out there in the springtime and expect to just be really, really good. And to be honest, you know, you see Jordan, one of the best athletes in the country or in the world, and he is training for this sport year round. So it takes a lot of reps and work to be really good at this sport. So if you're younger watching this and you're in the middle of the season, I would suggest that you don't really make any technical changes right now. Just try to keep working with what you got and maximizing that. And then once the season is over, make that change, work on it for a really long time, and then you go full speed with it once the season starts. All right, hopefully you guys like that video. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments below. We'll see you next time.